We are going to reconvene our special Board of Education open session, and we have recessed our closed session. Please accept my apologies for being a little bit late. There was very lengthy discussion, and that's the reason why it was recessed instead of concluded. This evening, we are convening at 7:09. A roll call is everybody is here, and we took no reportable action in closed session, and I would suspect that that would be the same after we go back into closed session. Currently, we'll move on to public comments. Ms. Huff, do we have any comments from the public?
Oh. Excellent.
Yes, Board President Hammond. Did you want to lead the pledge?
You know, I don't see it on the thing. That's why I rolled right over the top of that.
So
sorry. That's okay. It's probably a good thing to do. Let's keep with how we do our meetings. Mrs. Lockerbie, would you please lead us in the pledge?
I'd be happy to. If everyone would please stand. Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated.
Okay. Ms. Eppley, we could have the public comments, please.
Yes, Board President Hammond. The first public comment comes from Sonia Luganbuhl. I apologize if I'm pronouncing your last name incorrectly. Sonia writes, Dear MUSD Board, we are parents of students at Monroe Elementary School. We are concerned for families in our school district where we know children are being left home alone to do school as the parent is an essential worker and has to work. They have no one to call on to watch and supervise their children. We believe it is the moral responsibility of the school district to do research and provide a solution for the few families in this situation. We implore the board to find resources to help these families. We are not asking for childcare, but we are asking for problem solving at the most local levels, given the huge barrier to their learning and well-being. Other districts in the state of California are rolling out unique programs with priority for children of essential workers left unsupervised at home. We understand that there is much to do these days, and we all feel overwhelmed with our own situations. But we all agree that this is a foundational part of the responsibility of school districts to give special attention to these extremely vulnerable children. Thank you for your consideration. It's signed Kurt and Sonia Luganbuhl, Tiffany and Jeff Westra, Gabe and Katie Cabrera, Jamie Covey, Monica Solorzano, Rachel Vandermolen, Sarah Sheetler, Janine and Jason Samulian, Karen DeClue, Letty Camacho, Joey Alarano, Dana Detola, Deepa Fernandez, Rob and Jordan Bolt, Analia Cooper, Maricela Conscious, Brett and Abigail Veltman, Emily Milan, Sarah Gallegos, Heather and Matt Castle, Gabby Martinez, Dawn Neufeld, David and Tara Hull.
Thank you, parents, very much for the questions and the comment. Ms. Huff, is there more?
There are none.
Will you do us the board a favor, please, and send a copy of that to us? I was trying to write down all the names and I missed it. So if you could just send a copy, it'd be great.
Absolutely.
Board President Hammond, can I ask a protocol question?
Sure.
I don't want to respond directly to these comments because I know that we're not supposed to, but I know that there is a COVID-19 childcare funding allocated for essential workers and low-income families in the county. Am I allowed at this point to mention that or not?
Oh, I take it on. You bet. If you have information that might help these folks, let's go for it.
So it's the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors allocated $15 million in CARES Act funding for child care vouchers to serve essential workers and low-income families in the county. The Office for the Advancement of Early Care and Education is contracting with the Child Care Alliance, a network of LA County resource and referral alternative payment agencies, to distribute vouchers for this program. Families seeking early care and education services may call 888-922-4453. Eligibility for these vouchers is set by the state. That's the information that I have.
Thank you. Dr. Terosian, if you'll please take that number with that information and put it on the school's website so families would be able to see that.
I'd be happy to.
Thank you. Up next, we'll have some updates. The first is the distant learning update, and Dr. Terosian.
Thank you, President Hammond, members of the board. My weekly distance update, learning update, this is the first day of school yesterday. Today was the second. And so I'd just like to focus on that. But with the next slide, Ms. Huff, what I'd just like to do is remind everybody of the guiding principles that we have been using in order to move through each step as we've progressed. Next slide, Ms. Huff. Our enrollment and our attendance. Yesterday we had a bit of a glitch with our student information system, and but I can tell you what our projected enrollment was. 5,144, and we are below that right now by about 130 students. So what we do each year on the first day of school is follow up and call whoever didn't show up in whatever platform it is, and make sure that we're meeting the needs of our students so that they can come. And we have support staff at every school going through that process now. In terms of technology, what they are learning is that some of our students need hotspots, or they hadn't received their device for whatever reason. And so our priority has been to make sure that our students have the tools that they need to attend school. And had that third bullet talks about support staff. Thanks to their flexibility, we've been able to reassign some support staff in order to assist us in making calls, distributing hotspots, making sure that our students have what they need in order to attend. In terms of technology, as you know, the board approved the purchase of new Chromebooks for teachers. These are faster, they're larger, they're newer, they're new, brand new. Back in late June, when we still thought we would be using a hybrid model, late June, early July, certainly we were expecting to get them. Actually, no, it would have been much earlier than that the board approved it, because we know that there's always a 6 to 8 week lead time, and we would have done so much sooner. In any case, the shipment was a bit delayed, but we were able to receive it last week. Our Alan Chow and Charles Puvakin from our technology team and the director of our technology department just went and enrolled them is the term that they used, making sure that they are configured to every school settings and with the programs and whatever it is each device needs. They did that in 2 days, and we distributed them to our teachers just as soon as we could. And what our next step is to identify what what's not working the same as their old devices, so that we make sure that they are taking full advantage of any technology in the classroom and how it integrates with the newer technology. New devices, I don't know about you, but every time I get a new computer, I need to work it a little bit just to make sure I understand its functionality and how it connects with the other devices that I have. And so that's what we are working through right now, just to make sure that we are supporting them as they learn to use their new equipment. So in terms of glitches from that first day, we did have some power out in different pockets of Monrovia. I guess there were rolling brownouts or blackouts. And, we work through them. I think that is going to be the new normal, to expect those and to work through them. But really what I want to end with is just some pictures and a short clip video of what the first day was like in school in this virtual platform. Thank you to the many parents who submitted their pictures in order for us to be able to compile this video. Go ahead. Many thanks to our parents who have continued to be partners with us at home and making the first day of school seem so special. Just in those videos, you could see how much care is taken and how the students felt like they really were starting something new. We want them back, but until we can, it's nice to see that joy. Next slide, please, Ms. Huff. Of course, our next steps, and this has been a returning one, is to find what those the guidance is from the LA County Department of Public Health in terms of opening up learning pods, identifying and prioritizing our students to participate in these learning pods and establishing them in multiple schools. So we have a team working on that, and we hope to present a plan and priorities, capacity, and guidelines within the next few weeks. Next slide, please. We also, one of the things that we heard from teachers, from students, from parents was, the pacing, the cadence of every day is going to take some time to get used to, but it's very important for us to solicit some feedback about how things are going. Is it going okay? Is there too much? I know that when I taught at the end of my first day back in the classroom, I was exhausted because teaching has a different kind of energy that's required, and doing any more was just impossible. So, but in a couple of weeks, to solicit some feedback about how are things going, does anything need to be adjusted, and to just get either anecdotal information or just some quantifiable information from our parents, our students, and our teachers. We want to continue to streamline communication, make sure to keep everybody informed of the latest that has transpired, and of course, update the appropriate board policies and prepare our learning continuity and attendance plan. And then, of course, the board has also instructed and guided us to keep those subcommittees moving so that when the hybrid model, when we get a green light to bring in at least some of our students, we are ready to do so. And so every subcommittee, and I believe there are at this point 10 subcommittees with about 120, 30 individuals all together, their work, now that the distance learning is being finalized, their work will be to resume the work in the hybrid model and finalize those so that when the opportunity emerges, we will be ready to welcome our students. And that concludes my portion of today's presentation.
Any questions of Kathy on this? Celine?
I think Maritza had her hand up first.
Oh.
Thank you. Shoshana, can you bring us back to the technology slide? I think it was, yeah, right there. Dr. Tarosian, can you tell us how many devices were issued to teachers and what percentage that is of our total teacher staff?
191 devices were ordered for our teachers, and it is approximately 90% of our staff.
Great. And from what I understand, we were very lucky to receive these when we did because of back orders. Obviously, every district is in the same situation, which is why the other amount of Chromebooks that we ordered are on back order. So I do feel very fortunate that we received them, although not ideal to receive them just a few days before school starts. We're very lucky to receive them.
Yes, it would have been nice to be able to invite teachers back if they're able to come and collect their devices in advance so that they can work through them. But thankfully, the board instructed us early on to make sure that our teachers have the tools that they need, and we began the ordering process very early. And so any delay that we incurred was absorbed, and we at least had them for the first day of school or prior to the first day of school.
Great, and thank you to the IT staff for working so diligently for the 2 days that they had them to get them all ready for our teachers. So thank you very much for that.
Celine?
Thank you. Shoshana, would you mind going back to the slide about the learning pods? I want us to be very clear about this because as we heard at the beginning of our meeting, there are families, there are parents, there are community members that are concerned about, and we're all concerned about, children that are at home without their parents. I need some clarity about the learning pods. Is this absolutely going to happen?
Well, there are two variables to take into consideration. One is the will of the board, and the second is the guidance from the LA County Department of Public Health.
Okay.
Both of those are outside of our control.
So this isn't coming down the pike, get in line, here it comes. This is something that we are still exploring. This is something that we are still monitoring in terms of COVID. And if this were to happen, which it is not yet, who would the adults be? Who would the people be in the adults be in this learning pod? Do we know that yet?
We do not
know that yet. Okay. So I want to just make sure that we're clear with the families that are listening. this is something that we're still investigating, and this is something that we're still looking at. And this is something that is being guided by the county because of COVID. Is that correct?
That is correct. And the board has made it clear that you want us to explore it, investigate, and present to you the information and a plan so that when you have that information, you're able to make an informed decision about whether or not to begin or not.
And then I had a second question, if I may. You said at the beginning that we were off by about 130 students from what our projected enrollment is. Have we started following up with them to find out where they are?
We have.
And you will let the board know
Yes.
they are, where they are, what they need.
Yes. We will absolutely first take care of their needs and work with our schools and site leaders to gather the information. That takes a little bit of time.
Thank you.
Brian, did you have a question?
I did. I noticed that Celine kind of touched on it, the 130 students. Although that sounds like a lot for the first day of school, that is actually a lot lower than I was fearing that it was going to be based on all of the complications of having to sign on and all the difficulties that are coming with this. So that's actually great news, which means that the principals have done a good job in communicating to all of the parents on what to do on the very first day. So that's actually kind of exciting. Normally we don't get to our normal attendance until about the second week or so. So we're although it is a bad number, if it was to stay this way, I fully anticipate that we'll be okay there. But the learning pods is clearly, as our first public speaker or comment was, this is a high priority to many people, including the district, on how to make sure that families have some alternatives for their children. It's kind of frustrating that the county kind of dangled this in front of us a couple of weeks ago and then has not followed up with any meaningful guidelines on what we need to do and how we need to do this. But my question on the learning pods is there a possibility if it was done by a third party that we can make this move faster versus having us all do this in-house with district staff? Because I think that in itself is going to be another large discussion as to what and how that's going to look like. And I know we haven't broached that yet because we've been trying to open schools. So I don't know that I'm just thinking that having a third party come in may be able to speed this up, but not sure.
What we can do, well, let me address both of those comments, Mr. Wong. The first is, I just want to take the opportunity to thank the principals who have been tireless all summer in trying to finalize their plans. They have just done a Herculean job. In the site administrators have been extraordinary, and this community and our children are fortunate to be working with that kind of caliber of leadership. In terms of the learning pods, what we can do is explore what the options are with the third party and present that to the board as well.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Ed, did you have a comment? Kathy, I do have one question I have for you. How many ways does the district communicate with parents? Give me the names of each way that we communicate, please.
Parent Square.
That's the only way that we communicate.
That is our communication, as well as board meetings, I suppose. But
Okay.
Parent Square is where we provide that information. Yes.
Okay, because I heard from a couple of parents that they were being inundated with multiple messages coming from the district. And I was under the impression that we were having one platform, and that one platform is Parent Square. Okay.
During those guiding principles and streamlining communication, that is exactly why we began with Parent Square, and that is because we want to streamline and not ask parents to use so many different apps, and so every school is sending out its information through Parent Square.
So if a parent were receiving information on 3 different platforms, that would be incorrect. Somebody needs to change what they're doing.
I guess my question would be, is it through the Google Classroom that they're getting information from the teacher?
Phone blasts, is
Or
that?
phone blasts, it would be another, but that too, those phone blasts actually go through Parent Square.
Right.
Yeah. But I guess the question would be to find out from, if there are multiples, to go to the school principal and find out. There should not be so many. That was one of the concerns.
I remember that was the discussion that we had. Maritza, you have your hand up. You have a. Maritza, I think you're on mute.
Of course. Are you done? Because that actually is kind of a follow-up to what you're talking about.
Go ahead. Sure.
So Parent Square has also a messaging mechanism built in within Parent Square. So I think we were getting all the main general messages, but a couple teachers chose to message through the messaging system of Parent Square. And then others were sending them through Google Classroom. So it appeared that it was a multi-layer messaging system, but it's really 2. It's going to be, well, actually it's 3, because you have Aries. Aries interfaces with Parent Square, and Charles, when I'm finished, you, I'm sure, can add some clarity here. But Aries will give some information, but not all information. And then you have Parent Square that's supposed to be the hub for everything. And so we're getting all those messages. And then, like my daughter, my student received instructions through Google Classroom from her teacher. So it does give the appearance that we have multiple layers, but it is really Parent Square. That's the main hub right there. And that's where everybody needs to subscribe. You need to change your preferences. So you can get text messages, you can get emails, in addition to looking at your app for Parent Square. So there are different ways that those messages are coming through. All the users can customize that.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No, that's fine.
I've been playing
I
with
appreciate
it a lot.
I appreciate it. It came up, and thank you. That's a great information.
Now, here's another thing, though. I think some students have downloaded Student Square, and I'm not sure if that's causing any issue. I don't remember ever getting any instructions for our students to download the app of Student Square. So, Charles, you might want to chime in on this one.
Hello.
Yeah. You know better than I do.
Student Square is basically the student version of Parent Square. So that is being used by primarily at the high school. High school is using Parent Square to send out messages to both parents and students. And they can also send targeted messages to students as well, or parents, or both, depending on what they're trying to send out. So I know I was working with Mr. McGinnis a couple days ago. He did want to send targeted messaging to the students, especially on instructions on what to do for the upcoming days. So that is what it is. Student Square is more or less the student version of Parent Square. So it's still Parent Square.
So do they need to download it? Because I haven't seen anything with instructions to actually have the students download it. Maybe it's being communicated internally, but I haven't seen anything.
So with Parent Square, there's an invite function. So I know that Mr. McGinnis is sending out invites to the student, which goes to the student Google account. So it's tied in. Students don't actually have to download Student Square. They'll still, to my understanding, they'll still get the messages. It's just that they won't get the benefits of logging into Parent Square and commenting if wanted to maybe comment or participate or like a post. But to my understanding, they still get the messages. Now I know that Mr. McGinnis, I think his goal is he wants students to log in. Ultimately, we do want some participation with students on some of the posters out there. You know, there may be a day where he's going to want to do a poll. And that's where the benefits of downloading the app is, so that you can actually sign in and take the poll.
So Charles or Maritza or Catherine, can you tell us, is this just for high school or is this district-wide?
As of right now, we're starting at the high school, and we're looking into possibly the middle school, pending direction from Kathy. But the Parent Square normally does not recommend Student Square for K-5.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments from the board? Just a comment to parents. The board does hear you loud and clear that there are issues that need to have resolution. And our commitment to everyone is that we will work diligently to make sure that each one of these get addressed in the shortest amount of time possible with the best possible solution. We understand that this is a less than perfect environment for all of us to be in. Yet, I think that what we experienced yesterday on our first day showed that our staff did a really good job in preparation for the first day of school. And I would be remiss on behalf of the board if I didn't thank Dr. Tarosian and the entire staff of MUSD for all the work that they did. For anybody that watched any of the seminars, we had multiple teachers that have been working over the summer and they're not being paid. These are folks that came in on their own free time, and all we have to do is think about it in our own lives when you're asked to go to work and you did it without being compensated. That is not something to be taken lightly. And I want to put that out there in the public. So as we are working towards the goal of making this less than perfect platform better, that there are a lot of people who really do care. And I know we're little squares on a computer screen, but there are lots of human beings working really, really hard to make sure that we get this right for every single student and family in this district. And if you have a question or a concern, please do not hesitate to reach out to any of us on the board. We are here to serve, and we're here to serve you. And if you have an issue that you think that don't wait. You can hit our email addresses. We're easy to find, and we're happy to serve. I just want to put that out. I don't want anybody sitting at home getting frustrated or having any more anxiety than you need to have. This is already hard enough, and we'll try to take some of the pressure off. Thanks, and thanks for the folks that wrote in, and thank you for the work of our staff. Up next, we have our learning continuity and attendance plan, and Dr. Kaiser will be giving that report.
Good evening, Board President Hammond, Board, Superintendent, fellow cabinet members, and community. It's my pleasure tonight to give a report on the learning continuity and attendance plan for the 2021 school year and the learning loss mitigation funding. The background on this is that March 13th, we had an emergency dismissal that we're all aware of. And with the onset of COVID-19, school districts experienced increased cost and financial hardship. Next slide. And to that end, the state responded. They responded with several different funds, and the one that we're talking about tonight is the Learning Loss Mitigation Funds. This is one-time funding, and for our district, it's $4.2 million. The purpose of these funds are, number one, to address learning loss. Number two, to extend instructional time. Number three, to provide additional academic services, instructional materials, or supports, or devices and connectivity, and to provide integrated supports to address learning barriers and training to teachers and parents, access to school meals, or socio-emotional programs. Next slide. So, MUSD, we have begun to have discussions and to use our task force groups to collect some information and looking at where some of our gaps are. We're proposing the organization of these learning loss mitigation funds to be as follows. While you heard tonight that we have spent quite a bit of money on technology, we have about a third of our fleet of technology that is going to expire very soon. And with these funds, it is allowable to take some of this money and to increase our technology so that we're one-to-one across the district. And then those computers that are going to expire where we will not be able to update them to carry the programs that students need for learning, we would be able to replace those technologies. And then also look at what it costs to pay our employees for setting them up. As you heard, there's tremendous setup time and work that goes into developing our technology in our district. Secondly, looking at additional student support in the way of tutoring, anti-bias training with some of the recent current events, Saturday school for students who are either have experienced a learning loss or those students that need to make up attendance for some reason, and then social emotional learning. We are looking at purchasing some social emotional learning programs and putting that into our school day in a very intentional way, not something that is sort of a sideline, but something that becomes core to our thinking. Intervention for our students, attendance outreach. So those students that haven't come to school for whatever reason, having the funds to develop the attendance outreach to reach every single child that is on our rolls. Another area that these funds will be able to help us is in student nutrition. With the onset of COVID-19, many families lost their jobs, and during the summer, we fed everybody. Anybody who came to the table, we were able to feed them. And so there is some financial loss that we're allowed to go back and to refill that money for our student nutrition, and also going forward, continue to feed our community that has needs. In all of these areas, we're able to go back to March 2020, and the funds need to be expended by December 2020. So it's in the rears that we're developing our plan and moving forward. So it's a little bit of a strange way that we're looking at this, but these are the rules that we've been given. We also will be able to reassign staff that are protected by layoff prohibition for student learning purposes. So we have some staff that are not able to work in their current job because of COVID-19 and because we're not doing some of the things that we do in a normal school year. We will be able to take those employees and put them into job tasks that are helpful for students. And then the last item is textbooks. And let me say a word about textbooks. When COVID-19 came and we saw that the financial cliff was going to be very steep, the board decided to not adopt the science textbooks nor the elementary social science textbooks simply because there are not enough funds to do that. With these funds, we would be able to purchase those textbooks now, preventing us from having to do that a couple of years from now, which would be helpful for our students so that we get current textbooks into their hands that are aligned to the standards right now. Next slide. So I'll shift gears a little bit, and this portion of our presentation deals with the learning continuity plan and what some of the guidance and the legal framework is for getting the plan done. The learning plan outlines and memorializes the action steps taken by the district to ensure the continuity of learning and to mitigate the loss of learning due to COVID-19. It also, this learning continuity and attendance plan, and you'll notice those capital letters are LCAP. What's interesting is that our local control accountability plan carries the same capital letters in the title. They're both called the LCAP, and so this plan combines with our LCAP for the 2020-21 school year. So they work in tandem. The plan will guide how instruction will occur this year in both the distance and hybrid learning models. So the work of the task force is essential in completing this plan, our health guidance, and our stakeholder involvement. Next slide. So the adoption timeline. The adoption timeline that we have been given, this plan needs to be adopted by the governing board by September 30th, 2020. Our timeline in our district, we are receiving input with administrators, teachers, and stakeholders, and it would require then a public hearing on September 9th. And we will need to have remote participation during the meeting so people can comment during the public hearing. And then adoption will be held at the September 23rd, 2020 board meeting. Next slide. So the needs that need to be assessed and addressed. We need to address our learning gaps. And so right now, the teachers in the first week of school, they're beginning already to conduct their baseline assessments to ascertain how many students, fell behind in the spring of 2020. Address the gaps with interventions, so developing those interventions for our students. Address the needs of our unduplicated pupils, the students with unique needs, and students that are experiencing homelessness. And our unduplicated pupils are that group of students that are in our English language learner group, our low socioeconomic group, and our homeless and foster students. We need to provide the necessary devices for connectivity for distance learning and the resources and supports to address student and staff mental health and social emotional well-being. And we need to continue to provide school meals. This list of needs are what are outlined in the Senate Bill 98, and these are the required areas that we will be addressing in the plan. Next slide, please. So the consultation requirements, this isn't to be done in a vacuum. And so we're asked to consult with teachers, principals, district administrators, other school personnel, parents, and local bargaining units. And we're very thankful that we've been having these stakeholder meetings because, as Dr. Tarosian stated, we have 100+ members that are attending over 10 stakeholder groups. And in those groups, we will be using these groups to talk about our plans for this plan and the learning loss mitigation funding so that we have a quick, broad base to communicate with. And then we'll also be talking to PTA, MTA, our Teachers Association, and CSEA, our Classified Association. Next slide. So the plan review. The plan needs to be presented by the superintendent and reviewed by the District Advisory Committee and the District English Learner Advisory Committee. That meeting will happen on September 1st at 4:30 via Zoom, and we will send out the information in a very broad base. Next slide. Thank you. Increased and improved services to students. This is the same language that we have in our local control accountability plan. And this is the same consistency that we will be writing this plan with. And for our 2019-20, our unduplicated students represented 3,227 students in our district. And the services will be principally directed towards students who have identified learning loss that are from this group. What it means to be principally directed, we can have an activity or purchase that is for everybody in our district, all of our students, if we're having in mind these students. So we don't exclude anybody, but as we're thinking through what are the needs, we're looking at, what prevents the learning loss, what prevents students from slipping into underachieving, and then looking at principally directing our services toward these students. But it doesn't exclude anybody. Next slide, please. Questions?
Any questions of Sue? Comments? Celine?
I have several. Do you want me to ask them all, or do you want to rotate it?
Go for them.
Okay. Sue, you did touch on it briefly, and I appreciate that. But I was wondering if you or maybe Charles could go a little more in depth and explain about our tech expiring, because we have a lot of tech that is expiring, and I don't want people to think, well, the Chromebook looks fine. It's not expired. If you could go further into depth and explain that a little bit better for us.
I would like to defer to Charles because he'll explain that in more detail than I would be able to. But I do know that we're expiring.
We're all expiring.
Okay. Good evening again. What Google calls it auto end of update is something like that is what they call it. And what that means that Google no longer will guarantee that updates will be available. The devices will work. It's just that when new software comes out, there's no guarantee that it will work. So what that means is software applications out there that always require that you're running the newest version of the operating system may stop working. Basic web browsing will still work. So there are some strategies that districts use for devices that are have expired. Some of them will e-waste it, quite frankly. Some of the others, they may repurpose to maybe more of the preschool level for basic web browsing and things of that nature. So that's basically what it means when the devices are expiring. But I can tell you that there are some applications that we run, such as iReady. iReady always checks to make sure you're running the newest version of the Chrome operating system. And it basically gives you a warning if you're within, I think, one version behind. So software like iReady will stop working. But other things, they will run for a while. So that's what it means.
Another serious portion that we would not be able to run on an expired machine is our state testing. And so that's something that's very important to our district and to our students. And so, when I heard that, I really bought into the fact that these do have expiration dates.
Thank you, Charles. Sue, my next question is about anti-bias training. Shoshana, would you mind going back to that slide? And while she's doing that, Dr. Kaiser, did I hear you correctly in you saying that this is something that we have already done, some anti-bias training?
We've begun to,
Thank
we
you.
have purchased and we have begun our social emotional learning curriculum, which includes anti-bias training very intentionally. And this is for grades kindergarten through grade 12. And as we explained a couple of meetings ago, the schedule for secondary has Monday an hour-long block for every single student. They'll be receiving social emotional learning lessons during that time. The anti-bias training, the social emotional mental health lessons, all of those things are the anti-bullying lessons will be wrapped around in that class. And the curriculum that delves into this heavily is called Olveus. Olveus is a curriculum that we began using a few years ago, and we were part of a large national grant to receive the Olveus training and the materials for our elementary schools and our middle schools. The high school is now adopting the Olveus as well.
So this anti-bias training is for students.
Yes, it is.
Do we have any anti-bias training for teachers? Not that they won't be getting the training as they learn the curriculum and give it to our children. So I do understand that. Is there any additional or supplemental teacher-specific anti-bias training that we are looking at?
We have not explored that as of yet, but we certainly could.
That would be great. I'd love to talk about that further sometime. The textbooks, I think that is on this slide as well. So we will be buying those textbooks that we weren't able to buy with this stimulus funding, with this funding.
As we develop our plan, this is one of the items that we're looking at putting into our plan. And of course, this is at the board's approval.
Okay.
And so it is allowable to buy core textbooks with these fundings, knowing that during COVID, that all textbook funding across the state came to a halt. Mm-hmm. We were not the only district that started to pilot science and then said, we can't go any further. That happened up and down the valley. It happened up and down the state. And so with these funds, knowing that happened, it is allowable to purchase textbooks with it, because this is about learning and the loss of learning. When we don't have current textbooks for several years, that attributes to a loss of learning for our students across the board.
So as we continue to look at, and we as a board continue to look at the possibility of buying these new textbooks, I want us all to keep in mind the teacher training for these new textbooks, because when we don't have new textbooks for our students, there's learning loss. But if our teachers aren't properly trained in the new curriculum, in the new textbooks, there is also learning loss there. And I'm by no means saying that there has been. I just want to preemptively consider that is important to me, that we have the appropriate training for our teachers so that they can have all of their tools in place so that they can deliver the curriculum in the best way possible to our students. My next question is, let's see, this is the LCAP, not the local control accountability, but the learning continuity. You said you're going to be taking input from stakeholders as well as others. How are you getting input from stakeholders? Are you only getting input from stakeholders at that public hearing meeting on September 9th?
No, we have been, as we've even developed this short list of these 5 major components, this has come from many of the conversations that we began to have immediately when we found out about this. This has only been out for a couple of weeks. We began having the conversation with our stakeholder groups, which are representative of teachers, administrators, district office administrators, assistant principals, parents, the whole gamut. And then the one group that is missing from the list are students. And so we have a plan once we get it a little bit further down the road and we get some guidance from the board to then take the ideas to the leadership at the high school in the Renaissance program and the Renaissance program in the middle school. Of course, time is of the essence. We are busy trying to craft the big ideas and starting to write the details right now, knowing that September 1st is right around the corner.
Thank you. For my last question, Ms. Huff, could you go to the penultimate slide? Because what I have written down here is give an example of, and that's all I have written down. And I think that one. Thank you, Ms. Huff. I don't know what my question was. I'm sorry. It was give an example of something, but I'm sure I'll think of it in the middle of the night tonight.
You know where to find me.
Thank you for answering all of my questions. I appreciate you.
Anyone else have questions or comments? Brian.
Thank you, Dr. Kaiser. This is, quite a list. This is basically 8 pages of bullet points of additional things that this district is working on just to keep our kids at a normal level, or quote a normal level. And so the amount of work that's going into this is just kind of jaw-dropping when you realize that it's all going to change again, because eventually we're going to come back to school, either as a hybrid or in person. And with each change is going to represent additional challenges. And so it's good to see we're trying to stay ahead of the curve as much as possible. And it's even better to see that, the state has decided to help us with some of the funding of this. Now I just want the people to keep in mind that even though they gave us over $4 million, we're still $2.5 million in the hole. So, I don't want people to lose track that we've always got the eye on the ball. And even though we're coming up with all of these new programs, they're absolutely necessary. I mean, these are absolutely necessary to keep our students at the level we need them to be at, and to provide the support to the teachers that they desperately require as well. So I just wanted to say thank you to you and to Connie and her staff to stretch every dollar we can as far as we can.
Thanks, Brian. Anyone else? Sue, clearly this is a roadmap on where we're going to be going into the future. And I think this is one of the reasons why it's so important that we have these special meetings weekly. So as these things change, we can get the community to see and hear them almost as fast as we're getting it to see it and hear them. Thank you again for all the efforts on this. The one thing I like to talk about is the money that we received from the one LCAP, which is the second LCAP. It's $4.2 million. Currently, there's about $3 million that have not been slated to be used. That's the ones that expire in December. The board, this again for the community, the board is looking into making sure that we have big ticket items and not using this as nickels and dimes. Hard to spend nickels and dimes as millions, but we end up with real product at the end that is meaningful to the betterment and the education of each and every one of our students. So that's why we're looking at these big ticket items like the textbooks. The textbooks by themselves are about $1 million. It's a lot of money to put textbooks in people's hands, but now that that money's there and it will evaporate if not used, this is something that we're absolutely looking at doing with some of that money. Thank you, Sue.
You're welcome.
Up next, I think, let me go back to my inbox. Sorry, I'm running two different devices so that I can see the Zoom on one and I pick up my agenda on the other. That would conclude our meeting this evening. We will be putting our meeting at recess and go back into closed session. We'll be having a regular Board of Education meeting next week, and we will continue with these special meetings as often as we need to make sure the public is getting the information as often. As I said earlier, the members of the board are here to serve the public, and if anybody has any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. And if we can take away some of the anxiety you have, please let us try and do that instead of you getting frustrated. We will do our very best to make sure that we can get you the best information as fast as possible. Thank you all, and we will recess now and go back in the closed session.